Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With us today is Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, good to see you.
How are you this morning, Dr. Paul?
Doing well, doing well.
A little gloomy outside. Did you get your morning walk in?
I did, and always gives me energy.
I use coffee for that.
And you know, I have a theory it builds up your immunity too. And I always said that when I didn't know anything about medicine. But my family had a lot of common sense on health habits. But and my kids would tell you, he thinks exercise solves everybody's problem. Every once in a while you don't do that, not everything. But I tell you what it is. And so recently they have emphasized, you know, the different things that you do for building up immunity and exercise health. I said, well, that's good. I better do this twice a day now.
Well, you never seem to get sick, and I do, so I need to take a lesson from that. Anyway.
We're all vulnerable. Okay, but the country is sick.
Yeah,
and
it's sick of somebody.
Also, I think there's a little sickness raging, you know, the CDC, and I don't know. I wonder how well Dr. Fauci is. But he got to talk to a lot of doctors yesterday. He got to talk to Dr. Paul, not this Dr. Paul, another Dr. Paul. And he had talked to Dr. Marshall, and I didn't know a whole lot about him. But Fauci doesn't like him, so he must be a good guy. So, but they had some Senate hearings, and it had to do with the subject of well, the biggest subject of the whole hearing was Fauci is annoyed with my son.
Oh no!
Would that be an understatement?
It's kind of.
So he, I think he's losing it. You know, in a serious manner. That when it's name calling, I found one place in there. He was in the middle of a sentence making a point, and he flipped right over to attacking Rand. So that is what's really bothering him. You know, I think must realize that he's been exposed. He's gone away with it for 30 years. Why should he think, well, you know, it's time I put my tail between my legs and get out of here. I'm not going to put up with this. He's standing pat. But I think that's an ego trip that has lasted a long, long time, and it's the emperor has no clothes. You know, and that's what's becoming quite evident. I would say there's more, and we might be able to mention that today. The Democrats are running a little bit nervous about him too, and they're starting to challenge him. In the media a little bit, but not like it would be if Trump had done 1/10 of what was happening. You know, they'd have had a guillotine out there for him. So it's something that I think is very important to point out. But the antagonism is important to point out because who's telling the truth, you know, and maybe the truth hurts, and you know, there's you know, if you have a dictatorship, you know, the lying is not permissible. So that's why we've heard so many lies. It's a dictatorship, or at least an empire, and nobody wants to hear the truth. That's why they have to go after whistleblowers that reveal the truth. They really are the enemies, you know, of a republic and a government trying to do what's right. So this is in the news. I keep thinking later that he would resign, and Rand has, I think, even on the air, made mention that as things go along, and especially if the politics are shifting, he figures Fauci knows he isn't going to be there if the Republicans take over. So this might have boosted it up a little bit. There might not be months to go before Fauci resigns, and I wouldn't put a lot of money on that either. I think he might be so dead set on this that it would be impossible psychologically for him to accept this, because he would have to, it's sort of, without saying it, it would be a bit of a confession. You know, they were right all along. Rand Paul was right, and that's why I have to leave, because I overstepped my bounds. So that's why he's going to hang on for a while.
Yeah, I think so. And, you know, I think everyone, and I'm not a big fan of popcorn, but every time I hear that there's going to be a Fauci Rand, it's kind of like when you were going up against Bernanke. I'm tempted to pop some popcorn and just watch the clips. And I think probably a lot of America is as well. When you talk about 30 years of Fauci, and we've talked about it too, you know, the RFK book and also the McCullough interview on Joe Rogan, how during AIDS, remember, he was also dead set on only having a vaccine against AIDS, and how many people died because ultimately it was a treatment that they gave people rather than a vaccine. So he's got a long history of this. But we're going to play a few clips of it. I think the three most important ones, really, that we could just play the whole thing and probably just have a coffee break ourselves. But just to summarize before we play the clips, Senator Paul asked three very important questions. Number one, how is it that you feel that questioning you is questioning the science? What does that mean? That doesn't seem like a scientific way of looking at things. Two, why were you conspiring with Dr. Francis Collins to take down other eminent scientists who happen to disagree with you? And three, why don't you come clean on Wuhan? You know, you've said that you weren't involved in it, then I proved that you were, et cetera, et cetera. So that's essentially what Senator Paul was asking about and commenting on. And Fauci had no response. And let's watch how it goes. Here's the first one.
Let me make one real short point. This was yesterday. You know, because there's been so many clips, and timing is important. Where are we? So if he said this a month ago, it meant it didn't have much meaning. But this is yesterday, and it's still big, and it's in the news today.
Still big in the news, absolutely. And I think here's the most important clip. If we can put this first one up, ironically put up by my old friend Sebastian Gorka, I think in Budapest. But listen to this.
But when the planner is a government official like yourself who rules by mandate, the errors are compounded and become much more harmful. A planner who believes he is the science leads to an arrogance that justifies, in his mind, using government resources to smear and to destroy the reputations of other scientists who disagree with him. In an email exchange with Dr. Collins, you conspire, and I quote here directly from the email, to create a quick and devastating published takedown of three prominent epidemiologists from Harvard, Oxford, and Stanford. Apparently there's a lot of fringe epidemiologists at Harvard, Oxford, and Stanford. And you quote in the email that they, or from Dr. Collins, and you agree that they are fringe. And immediately there's this takedown effort. A published takedown, though, doesn't exactly conjure up the image of a dispassionate scientist. Instead of engaging them on the merits, you and Dr. Collins sought to smear them as fringe and take them down. And not in journals, in lay press. This is not only antithetical to the scientific method, it's the epitome of cheap politics, and it's reprehensible, Dr. Fauci. Do you really think it's appropriate to use your $420,000 salary to attack scientists that disagree with you?
It was a long clip, but I think it really set it up well. And I really do think that's one of Senator Paul's finest moments. Very cool, very calm, just laid it out.
Yeah, the facts were there, but the politics, which are important too, the practical politics of the wasteful government spending and what happens there. And the salary is something that's real abuse. People don't like that. Yeah. But what about the millions, many millions, probably billions of dollars that get spent on this stuff? And one of the reasons why, I'm sure Rand hasn't done it either, but I never voted for 1 penny of foreign aid or U.S. government using funds to go overseas and influence their foreign policy. I mean, it's all wasted money. It doesn't work. It makes us more endangered. This is when you think about it, this is a mess. It's just starting to get sorted out. It's not complex after you see some of these facts on what went on, but it's dangerous too. Yeah. And it all has to do with this easy money deal. Print up the money, spend it. We can control it. We make that dollar in our military the empire of the world. And as long as our empire is there, we can do this and get away with it. This is one time where it looks like this stuff was all buried. Yeah. A year or two ago, Rand was saying this stuff, and I sure hope he knows what he's talking about. Boy, it's been verified this week, hasn't it?
Yeah.
The emails and all are proven that this has been what was happening.
There's a lot of focus on Wuhan and who was involved in funding it. I know Senator Paul's done a lot on that. I think that's important, but I think what's much more digestible, a more digestible bite, is just how despicable the real Anthony Fauci is. That he would conspire behind the scenes with Francis Collins, who's also a despicable person, to undermine, to attack by proxy, to destroy the reputation of three such eminent epidemiologists. And Senator Paul said it right. I didn't know there were so many fringe scientists at Harvard, Oxford, and Stanford. That's really weird. But that's something you can really sink your teeth into, because I think that shows the real character. He was a coward. He didn't want to sit down with these 3 epidemiologists and say, let's hash it out. Let's talk about the Great Barrington Declaration. Let's have a conference. Let's televise it. He didn't want to do that. He was a coward, and as Senator Paul pointed out, he didn't even go to a medical journal to refute it. He went to a left-wing a website, I think it was The Nation, and he used that, or Wired, to push the takedown of these 3 eminent doctors. That says everything you need to know about Fauci.
No, I think your point is well taken. There's a character issue here. But that sort of is pervasive in Congress. All degrees of it, the more power they have, you might decide that maybe Nancy Pelosi lacks a little character. You know, it is not hard to find people, and her husband might lack a little character too. But if they are totally void with any character, then I think what would do is that they have rejected this whole idea. There's technicalities. If you want to look at the regulations and the laws, there's a lot to tell them and guide all this. Is all well intended, but there was no emphasis or recognition of what a higher law is, and it is a moral standard ultimately. And that's the founders recognize this.
Yeah.
They said all this work we've done on this Constitution to try to narrow it down and tell you what a free country is all about. It won't work if the people don't have character.
Yeah.
That's what he was saying.
That's a good point. Well, let's look at part of Fauci's response. And this is, rather than answering these 3 points, this is what he decided to do. He decided to criticize Senator Paul for putting this on his website. Let's look at this next clip. I think it's only about 20 seconds. Yeah, let's listen to this.
Why would Senator want to do this? So go to Rand Paul website and you see fire Dr. Fauci with a little box that says contribute here. You can do $5, $10, $20, $100. So you are making a catastrophic epidemic for your political gain. So the only thing
attacked.
So his point was how mean Senator Paul's being by talking about you need to fire Fauci.
And he's getting all this money from the taxpayers and ripping us off. But Rand was able to defend this quite well, and I think people who were trying to make fun of it was perfectly legal and everything else. And I think it was a pretty good fundraiser.
Yeah.
It sounded, when Fauci was talking, I said, he's just building Rand's war chest there, helping him out in his campaign.
And there's so many people on Twitter posted memes of Fauci holding up a sign saying, fire Fauci. I don't think he realized the implications of him holding that sign up.
Right.
I wanted to, and there was a follow-up, I think Senator Paul went on Newsmax, and he kind of explained, I think we're just going to look at the first maybe 40 seconds. And this is where he kind of sums up after the event. I know we're doing a lot of clips today, but I think this is worth watching. Just 40 seconds of this one.
And you didn't get to respond to that as well, because he then went on to say that you're doing this all for political gain. He points to your website asking for donations. How do you respond to that?
Well, we are opposed to him. I think he should be in jail. And it is about elections. If the Republicans take over, if I win re-election, I'll subpoena all his records. And we will investigate whether or not the virus came from a lab in Wuhan. So he does fear that. And it is about electoral politics. I tell people, go to randpaul.com if you want to fire Fauci. I'm very honest about that. That's what politics is about. And I'm not pulling any punches. I think he does need to be fired. And I really think he has lied to Congress. I think he lied to us about...
I think Senator Paul was smart here because he said, yeah, it is politics. This is politics. This is my website. I'm trying to get elected. I'm trying to get the majority in the Senate. And when I do, there's going to be hell to pay, Fauci.
Right.
So, yeah. I think it was Zero Hedge that said this must have been one of the most clever fundraising things ever. Whoever was on Senator's staff.
Yeah, but some of this stuff falls in place. You know, some of my biggest fundraising days, I had nothing to do with it. You know, there was a day when we had some type of a record in a campaign.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just somebody was attacking me. And that's what, wow, let's help them
out.
Help them out, yeah. But it is also, there are some people who can plan pretty well and pick it. And you know, like you say, it's legitimate. If he was promoting something that was absolutely illegal, stupid, and unconstitutional, I mean, that would be immoral and it would not show good character. But if he made his case for this being a rather dignified way of trying to improve the situation.
Yeah. Well, let's do a couple of final things on the Rand Fauci thing. Because first of all, and we didn't talk about it a lot. No more videos, actually. We just have a couple of things. But you know what Fauci said? Oh, it's all your fault for putting this on your website that some crazy guy got in a car and was going to come kill me. You know, and that is just ridiculous, trying to play the victim. But here's a good, let's do that second JPEG if we can. I don't know this person, but it's a good tweet. He said Rand Paul was shot at on a baseball field, beaten up by his neighbor, and surrounded by an angry mob outside the White House. So it's incredible to watch Dr. Fauci whine about the death threats he receives to him instead of answering his questions. And that's a good point. And the second one, let's look at the next one, because this is a very clever take, and I just could not resist it. Karlin Borisenko, she said, so basically, Rand Paul proved that Fauci is attacking people who disagree with him. And in an effort to disprove that point, Fauci attacked Rand Paul for disagreeing with him.
Right.
That's a great take.
Yeah.
So anyway, good day yesterday.
Anyway, want to move on a little bit, and we want to talk about the boosters.
Yeah.
And our friend Alex Berenson writing again and making a point. Others have done the same thing. There's information out here now, and it sort of has burst forward here in the last couple days, even though there's been a few people around town and around this office that have tried to make this point, about boosters. Be careful. And I think the result's eventually going to be not only caution and skepticism on the boosters after the fourth one at least, but there's going to be more and more skepticism of vaccines, which have been more designed for passports than they have been with the scientific evidence that this is a good place to skip the rules, don't test it, use your vaccine because it's so desperate. And it's going to turn out that the results, the complication of lockdowns and vaccines, probably much greater than the disease itself. Now that's heresy, I know that, but time will tell. We'll see who's right. But it's starting to talk about that, and this is what this is all about on the boosters. Berenson saying it's over.
Yeah.
And they're going to quit. But we've been talking about that for a long time. That no matter what goes on, let's give another booster shot. And yet others would argue the case that these variants aren't exactly the different disease. It might be a variation of what's going on. It might even be beneficial in spreading immunity. That's what some people believe.
Yeah.
But no, but right now, I would say this report is not held by just one person. A lot of people are going to say, we have a little bit of comfort now because some people, who knows a lot about this are saying that, the booster shots are unnecessary. People are sick and tired of the mandates. I'll tell you, in places which I never believed would be starting to resist, they're starting to resist. I think this is going to accelerate the resistance from the average person, and I think they're going to be very noisy next year because in spite of the shortcomings of many elections, I think the election is a sounding board for a lot of people.
Yeah, and this new Berenson piece, and I recommend everyone that's interested subscribe to his Substack, Alex Berenson's Unreported Truths, I think it's called. But he says boosters are over, like you say, and he cites it just came out yesterday, new guidance by the World Health Organization, the WHO. While I think he might be a little bit premature in predicting boosters are over, it's certainly very interesting to see what the WHO said. And there's one particular sentence in this report that's very interesting. We're going to have to jump ahead a couple of clips to that one with the blue border that says World Health Organization, if we can, while we're digging that up. This is very interesting in the context of new guidance. It says, a vaccination strategy based on repeated booster doses of the original vaccine composition is unlikely to be appropriate or sustainable. And that's there's a lot of words in there, Weasley words and stuff, but essentially that's what it boils down to. And there's a couple of things there. It's not sustainable to expect the entire world to get a new shot every 3 months. It's just not possible. And number two, it really caught my attention when they talked about a booster shot of the original vaccine composition, because we know now, we talked about the Wall Street Journal, the Danish study, the Israeli study, the German study, showing that people are maybe more likely to get Omicron if they've been vaccinated. At least that's what some of these studies are suggesting. So using the same thing that didn't work against it the first time, again, why would that work a third or fourth or fifth time?
You know about the description of the idiocy.
Yeah, insanity. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, anyway, no, I think, like you say, and we try to avoid very much of trying to make a declaration, but we feel so strongly about getting the proper debate. Silencing people is what really gets us excited and saying that has to stop, and that has happened, and too many people have rolled over on that, and it's making a mockery out of medical science, and that bothers me a whole lot. Well,
the European Union though is also talking about boosters here, and that's an important thing. We saw this on Zero Hedge. And in fact, if we can just back up to and put up that repeat COVID-19 vaccine. This is from the Epoch Times. Repeat COVID-19 vaccine booster shots trigger regulator warning about immune system risks. That's a big way of saying that the European version of the FDA is getting very nervous. And here's the operative quote, Dr. Paul, if we can do that next clip. The European Union's drug regulator expressed doubts about whether a second booster dose of the currently available COVID-19 vaccine would be sustainable. There's that word again, long-term approach. Mario Cavalieri, the European Medicine Agency's head of vaccine strategy, told a media briefing, quote, "There is an emergency discussion around the possibility of giving a second booster dose with the same vaccine currently in use. Data has not yet been generated to support this approach."
Well, it will, and it's coming that way. So I think it's all going well under the circumstances of the obstacles of the, the professions, the university professors. Even though that's been cracked a bit, we're finding out the people who have been silenced are getting to have a voice. And I think the American people are starting to realize that there's a lot to do because you know what probably sort of helps it. The scientists and the politicians might be silenced, but now the common man is being silenced when he gets taken off Facebook. Oh, now it's hitting home. You mean they can do this again? And they're starting to realize that. So there was something in Politico.
Not a friend of our philosophy.
No, and I would say in the last 6 months, I find something that's more balanced, and this is good. I remember when Politico started, and it was during the first presidential race that I was in, and I think I might have been the first one ever to be interviewed there. And of course, they were interested in doing anything, even getting me on. But I think that they may just be very pragmatic, and they're recognizing what's going on and what the people are looking for. But there was a hearing that they just had, and the Democrats were involved. And the whole theme of this is the Democrats, like we've said earlier this week, is they're getting a little bit frightened about what's going on, and they were asking the tough questions, in the committee, and that I think is very good. They're going in the right directions. But I got a kick out of some of the questions that was asked. It was serious business, but here was one. The committee is chaired by Patty Murray, and she interrupted to ask more clarity. That was a lot about what this is. They flat out are confused, and and they go home and they have to defend Biden and Fauci and all this stuff, and a little more clarity on what to do between days 5 to 10. When they changed it used to be 10 to 9. But it's in limbo. So people get if you're having a town hall meeting, you're gonna get quizzed, and if you're a member of the Congress or whatever, you're supposed to know a couple things. And then Walensky replied, quote, this is what her instructions for those 5 days of limbo. You shouldn't go visit grandma.
Okay.
And you shouldn't get on an airplane. Period. Now that's really brilliant, isn't it? I mean, but here's another famous person, and I politically I had a lot of disagreements. It's sort of a little bit weird. On personal basis, I got along fine with Mitt Romney. But Mitt Romney is sometimes he's independent-minded, but not always independent-minded like we might be independent-minded.
That's one way to
but
say
he
it.
said Senator Mitt Romney later told the officials that many Americans, himself included, don't even understand what it means to be exposed, to the virus. So the medical advisor, they answered that, and they just said, Anthony Fauci explained, it means 15 or more minutes in close contact with somebody known to be infected. So take your pad of paper down there and get a watch and 15 minutes. But the real point of this whole thing is these weren't Republicans searching for a needle and needle this guy. These are coming from Democrats who are very much needled and worried and are sick and tired of hearing these questions, and they shouldn't be that complex. But this is a reflection of planned medicine, economic planning. You can't do it in the first attempt to do it. All you can do is build paper after paper after paper, and then you have arbitrary judgments of it, and then if you get into trouble, then there's arbitrariness on how to interpret it, and that's what this is. You can't deal with public health and sickness and epidemics with the exclusion of the patient, and the doctors making decisions, rather than having the government come in and excluding them and say, well, you have to get your vaccine, but you're not allowed to use treatment. We're not dealing with treatment. We're dealing with prevention, and we don't want to hear anything about ivermectin. That's not in the cards.
Yeah. Well, when the wind was blowing in their direction, they were riding high, all these Democrat members of Congress and senators. They were riding high, but the wind is shifting now, and they're looking at the elections coming up in just a few months, and the greatest fear they have is the fear of losing power, because they'll cling to it with the very last seconds of their life, and that's why they're starting to panic, and they're looking at people like Walensky and Fauci, and they're seeing that these great experts, these wonderful, amazing scientists, really, it's kind of hollow when you start knocking on that empty cranium, and it's terrifying them. Let's put up this clip because this is from Politico, and it's got a great title because they're trying to help decoding what Biden health officials told Congress about Omicron. And here's another quote that I found in here, Dr. Paul, that's interesting. Recalling the fact that Politico tends to be, at least it had been before it was sold, I think to Bertelsmann, tended to be very much in the camp of the Democrats. Let's look at this next clip. This is from the Politico article, the takeaway. Here's the takeaway. Confusion still reigns. People 5 days into a COVID infection shouldn't go visit grandma, but if they're a healthcare worker, they're cleared to treat grandma in a hospital. The lack of testing component to reenter society also reflects the administration's current scramble to address shortage of tests, leaving the CDC individuals to make decisions based on a subjective evaluation of their own symptoms. The question, how did the CDC arrive at these guidelines? Was it a public health or economic decision? What they said. Walensky acknowledged that the CDC changed its quarantine and isolation guidance based both on new research about when COVID positive people are most infectious, as well as, quote, the real world circumstances we currently face with a decimated workforce.
When this all started, the full knowledge and understanding of how this virus would be more deadly for a certain group of people was unknown. Nobody knew at the beginning that to start advising, you don't need to give it to kids. They're not going to get it, but they didn't know. But they figured that out. So the information was valuable. The other one was that people with that are elderly in nursing homes, it's not a good thing to do. So what do? They emphasize sending people there and sending other people into there to maybe get exposed. And the elderly have not been really protected, from this. So they took the science and they misused it. Actually did the wrong thing. Well-intentioned. A lot of those people, some of those people, probably that go back in, even if they send them back to a nursing home, they're probably going to do quite well because they have been, health providers. But that's not the point as much as they shouldn't be making these decisions. So in the old days, they say, you have a cold, take a couple days off.
Well, the last thing we want to talk about, we don't want to go into it too much, But Project Veritas, everyone was talking about it. They had a massive data dump. They released a bunch of Defense Department and DARPA emails and memos, and it hasn't been completely gone through yet. But a couple of things, in addition to Fauci's role with Wuhan, et cetera, in addition to that, something popped up that now Zero Hedge noticed at first, and then we certainly paid attention, that came out of this data dump. And Eric Weinstein, who works for Peter Thiel's organization, a very, very smart guy, he happened to notice this, and he put this up. This is from a DARPA release. Put up this next clip. And Weinstein is saying, help me understand this, DARPA. What am I looking at about ivermectin? I don't have the context. And then go to the next one and he's asking, hey, can we see this whole report? This is interesting. Here is from the DARPA memo. Ivermectin, identified as a curative in April 2020, works throughout all phases of illness because it both inhibits viral replication and modulates the immune response. Of note, chloroquine phosphate hydroxychloroquine, identified April 2020 as a curative, is identified in the proposal as a SARS-CoV inhibitor, as is interferon, identified in May 2020 as a curative. Now, we don't know about these documents. We don't, maybe they're fake, but this is what came out. So if DARPA knew back in April and May that there are, quote, curatives for COVID, then what the heck is going on, Dr. Paul?
Well, I think I have a suspicion what's going on. This doesn't sound logical, but from a certain viewpoint, it might be to their logic on what they're trying to do. And that what it is they don't want people treated because their goal was mostly getting vaccination. Everything is blame the spread of it, not treating the disease. Just recently, there have been statements by public figures saying we should now concentrate, on treating the patient. Oh wow, that is amazing. So this is something that it makes sense if that's what your goal was. And here they actually prohibited the treatment. Ivermectin is a treatment, and the record shows that, and this revealed it too. It isn't. Remember, at the beginning, the first thought was ivermectin would be helpful. Even the people who were pro-ivermectin said you should very much take it early because it might not work later.
Yeah.
But now what they're saying is this study indicates that taking it any time might be helpful.
Yeah.
It's
interesting, and if that's what DARPA thinks, and again, we haven't seen anything that disproves it. Weinstein is saying, hey, we need a little bit more info on this, and we do need a little bit more info. If this is the case and the military did know early on that this is probably a scandal of all times. if true, there's a big caveat there, but certainly we saw that. Anyway, I'll just close by thanking our viewers. We try to do it as often as we can, but we do appreciate you. Obviously, we've had some good upticks in the show viewership this week, and we appreciate that. That's because of you. If you hit like, and if you share, and if you subscribe to our channel, it will help us reach a lot more people. And also go to ronpaulinstitute.org and subscribe over there. We'll never sell or rent or loan out your name to anyone. It's just a way for us to keep in touch with you because you never know what'll happen. But thanks very much for watching the show, and thanks for keeping us on the air.
Very
Dr.
good,
Paul.
And we don't have a whole lot of things to follow because for the most part, our numbers are there, they're steady, and they grow. But this past week, and I'm estimating this because I don't watch them very close, but I think from my viewpoint, our numbers might have doubled this week.
Yeah, very good.
And that goes along with our excitement about some of the things that are breaking loose. The truth is breaking out, and there's information becoming available. And I've asked people that are interested, just talk to one person today and see if you can get them to watch our program, because we don't charge for the program. And it's something that the numbers are important, and we measure our success by people changing their minds. And in a minor way, we think we contribute something, but it still takes a lot of people. It takes a lot of these scientists that have more of a scientific reputation, and they've been putting out information that we've been able to look at and trust. So spread the message, and as I've always said, liberty is a much greater tool than tyranny. I want to thank you for tuning in today. Please return to the Liberty Report.